Hello everyone and welcome back to a Slice, a Spice, and a Dice movie reviews. Y'all, today we're going to be talking about a little bit of an older movie. I think it's like 2009. It's called The Human Centipede. Y'all, this is going to be less of a review and more of me like seeking out trauma bond with somebody because of how damn disturbing this movie was, okay? Straight right off the damn bat, I don't know what the point of this film was other than to just like push every button in the human psyche. Now, that being said, we will still be answering the ultimate question of did it make me put my phone down? And does it get a slice, a spice, or a dice movie review rating? The Human Centipede first sequence is a 2009 Dutch body horror film written, directed, and co-produced by Tom Six. The film tells the story of a deranged German surgeon who kidnaps 3 tourists and joins them surgically, mouth to anus, forming a human centipede. Okay, so now that is literally the premise of this movie. I do think that the whole point of it was to see how many people they could get to walk out of the theater. I mean, y'all, this is one of those where I was embarrassed to be watching it. I was like, are the blinds closed? Are the windows shut? Like, I can't, this is bad. I mean, it is really bad. Like, I felt like a dirty person for being willing to watch a film like this, y'all. That being said, so let's talk about it. Now, again, I'm going to say this. This is going to be like kind of a mixture of like a story time review, so there will be spoiler alerts. However, I'm going to say this. There's really not that much of a plot to the film. It's more like a gross out fest, if you will. You go into it knowing kind of what to expect, and so the whole premise is like, well, how do they pull this off? You know what I mean? And so that's like what does the human centipede look like, and how far are they going to take it? Oh, well, they took it, okay. And so there's that. No, I'm not going to go into some huge, long, drawn out, you know, I'm telling every last detail, so you'll totally be able to watch the film, and there'll be, you know, some moments where you're like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. That being said, if you don't want there to be spoiler alerts, just know that we are getting ready to enter Spoiler Alert Nation. Okay, so the film opens up and we are introduced to a few different people. First being the crazy doctor. So now he will tout himself as like this retired surgeon who specialized in separating Siamese twins and whatnot. And now he has this fascination with, you know, making this human centipede. That's the whole premise of the damn movie, okay? So it's a lifelong goal of his and he reaches out to achieve it. So we see him in the beginning and he's like parked on the side of the road, and a truck driver kind of pulls up to the same road and parks and takes some toilet paper and walks out of the woods. And the doctor goes into the woods with a gun and you hear a crack, and you know, that's that. So you assume that he's killed the guy or whatever. So I will say this, there's a lot of plot holes, and again, the plot's very thin. A lot of like, you know, mistakes in the film, that type thing. The film overall feels like a grindhouse Chainsaw Massacre type film. Like its whole reasoning is to gross you out type situation. So because of that, like the acting's kind of like, you know, the storyline, you know, it's just like the whole point is to see the human centipede. So anyways, we are then introduced to 2 of the main victims who will become part of the centipede. And it's these 2 girls, they're American girls, and they're traveling Europe and just kind of, you know, doing a little tour of Europe, if you will. So they're like at their room and they're getting ready and they're making calls like, how do we find this nightclub? And one of them's talking to a friend on the phone and so on and so forth. And so next we see them, they're in their car, they're driving, it's nighttime, they're dressed to the nines, they've got their stilettos, they've got their mini skirts, and so they're out in the woods. Of course, a horror film trope, they get a flat tire. There are tons of horror film tropes in this, okay? So they get a flat tire, they're out there trying to figure it out, they don't know what to do, they get back in the car, and then this kind of creepy old man, not the doctor, but another one, he pulls up and he's like talking to them in German or something like that, and they're trying to ask him for help with the tire. He's talking all this dirty talk to them and they don't know it at first, and that was like so unsettling because I'm like, oh my god, I never thought about that, but you know that happens. And it was so creepy and just so inappropriate, and it was like so unnerving because you're like, here's these 2 girls dressed for the nightclub, looking like they're going to the nightclub. Here's this nasty old man talking all this dirt to them. Finally, one of the girls realizes like he's talking dirty and she's like, you know, rolls the windows up, ignores him till he leaves, and there's that. So it does create the sense of dread in the viewer. For me, it did at least. So eventually they decide to do the next horror film trope, which is get out of the car and walk through the woods to find a home to make a phone call. You already know how this is going to end, okay? They make it their way through the woods. It starts raining, makeup running, dresses already skin tight, you know, the whole 9 yards. So they knock on this door, and guess who lives there? It's the doctor, of course. Who else would it be? I mean, come on. Now, here's the thing with the doctor, the actor that played him. The actor who played him is so unsettling, and it's like a mixture of a cringy performance plus one of those like performances where you're like, is this just how this person is in real life? Like, I can't imagine them being any other way. And the doctor's behavior is so out there and bizarre that I'm like, only an idiot would go into his home. I don't care how wet and cold you are. You should be turning around and running back to your car. But that doesn't slow these girls down a damn bit. So once inside, we see all this creepy imagery. You know, he has pictures of, you know, Siamese twins all over the walls and stuff. It's really gross. And he's basically like, you know, look, I'm going to get you some water and this, that, and the other. They ask him to make some phone calls. He goes to the kitchen. He pretends to do it. He then drugs them. And so, fast forward, the girls wake up and they're in a makeshift hospital. He basically has like a hospital surgical room in his, you know, dungeon area downstairs. Remember the truck driver that we thought he killed? We hadn't killed him. He was down there too. And for whatever reason, the doctor's like, you know what? He's going to have to go. And so he injects something into the guy's IV. The guy dies. Obviously, this is unsettling to the girls. Fast forward, doctor goes out, gets a third victim, and he comes back and is basically like, now he's got the 3, you know, pieces to his centipede. So then, and this is where it's like, oh my God, what have I got myself into as a viewer? So he begins to basically, he shows them the project, like a PowerPoint about, you know, his plans for him. And it's just this, probably the director drew it up real quick. It's 3 people on their hands and knees, and like their intestines are going from one person through their butt to the mouth of the other person and so on to form the centipede. I mean, y'all, side note, the movie touted itself as 100% medically accurate. You know, of course, they completely went on this whole premise of like that. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, you cannot do this. Somebody would die from this, y'all. I mean, especially the stuff we're going to talk about. So nonetheless, he's telling them what he's going to do, and he's also showing them how he has to remove a part of their knee to make them, I mean, number one, immobile, but to make their knees do something to be better, a better centipede, I guess. I don't know. So, anyways, there's all that. He starts to knock them out. They're all screaming and crying. One of the girls gets loose and takes this whole journey around his house trying to get away. And when he finally catches her, gets her back on that, he's like, you're gonna be the middle. And I'm like, oh my God. Like everything they do, because I was thinking, I was like, watch, he'll punish her. He'll punish her. Because I was trying to decide what is the worst part of the centipede to be. Obviously, the 2 back ends. Because the first person isn't attached to somebody's butt. You know what I'm saying? But then it's like, well, the last person only has to do with that. So, yeah, it's horrible. So, he picks her for the middle. He knocks them out. He does the surgery. And when they wake up, well, he leaves them on the surgeon table. And they're, like, under the thing, so you're not seeing them. And so then, at one point, I guess he somehow put them in another part of the house, whatever, and he's like slapping the guy. The guy's the front part, and the girl's the other 2 back part. And so he's slapping the guy to wake him up, and of course they wake up and they're horrified. And that's where you're just like, oh my God. Like, oh my God. I mean, that kind of stuff just like, it gets under my skin because you know that kind of, maybe not a Human Centipede, but people were doing crazy experiments to people like this and other, you know, segments of history, and you know there's some crazy stuff that goes on out there. So that part where I was like, oh my God. And then to wake up and be like, my mouth is sewn to a person's butt, you know, and I'm a centipede. It's so outlandishly crazy. So the doctor does this. Well, they don't just leave this there. So then the doctor wants to begin to train the centipede. Oh my God, y'all. And this is how I watched it. the doctor wants to train them as the Centipede. So you see different variations where he's taking them outside, you know, and they're having to learn to walk all in sync with each other. And so then he's gonna like teach them to fetch a paper, you know, but the dude up front's like not having it and all this. I mean, y'all, it's so bad. Okay, so there's all that going on, okay? Now, one of the scenes that they show is they're outside and they're doing something, and the guy up front goes, "Oh my God, I've got to use the bathroom." He says a little more graphic than that. It's like, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." And then y'all, the doctor's yelling at the girl who's attached to him, "Eat it, eat it." And I was like, y'all, no, okay? I was like, there is no point to this, y'all. Look, my eyes twitching. My eyes twitching, that's how disturbed I am over it. I was like, there is no point to this movie other than just like psychologically damaging people, okay? I was like, what in the hell? How did this ever get greenlit, okay? Like, how did this ever get even put out there? So it's stuff like that, y'all. So fast forward towards the end, cops come, they're like, "Look, some people have been, we heard some screams, we want to know what's going on." Doctor's like, "You need a search warrant." And so they're like, "Well, we're gonna be back with a search warrant." And so they do that, and the Centipede's like, "God dang, this is our chance to get out." So Doctor goes downstairs, Centipede has gotten a knife, Centipede attacks Doctor, Centipede climbs upstairs. I hate to call it Centipede, but it's better than saying the guy and the two girls. Centipede climbs up the stairs, and it's just, you know, they're screaming in agony. Now, mind you, I forgot to tell you, the girl in the back is basically in the process of dying. Like, she's got an infection, so she's dying. Fast forward, so they get up there, they get into a room, and the doctor, and I cannot remember now, I'm so traumatized, what comes first in this, so I'll just describe these differently. So they've attacked the doctor is injured, right? So they come upstairs, they're in a room, the doctor finds them. And the guy up front gives this whole monologue about how this is the punishment for his life and all that, and then cuts his neck and kills himself. So he's bleeding out, the girl behind him is like, you know, sitting there, you know, like, oh my God, you know, she can't do anything, she's screaming. Well, her friend in the back of her is dying too and dies. Okay, so there's that. Now, when the cops come back, there ends up being this whole shootout between the cops and the doctor. Now, the doctor had tried to drug the cops and do that same thing to them. And so there was this whole thing of like, oh my God, they're going to be the fourth and fifth pieces. So there's that. So the cops end up getting killed, doctor ends up getting killed. And so the horror of it, I mean, one aspect is that the girl in the middle is left to just die this horrifyingly slow death. So there's that. That's the quick synopsis of it. So here's my little 2-cent take on it. It is a disturbingly horrible film. Okay, when I sit here and talk about disturbingly horrible films, like Chainsaw Massacre comes to mind. Chainsaw Massacre scares you. There's something more to it, and I'm talking about the very original one. It's obviously over the top, and it's like this, oh my God, what are they doing? There's that. This film didn't really scare me. I mean, the idea, the premise of it obviously did, as much as it disturbed me, if that makes sense. There was very little like, oh God, they jumped down and scared me to this film. This was more, it went to some place in your mind and was like, you weren't expecting this, but we're taking you there, type thing. The acting is bad. There's mistakes made in the movie. Yada, yada, yada. I can 100% see how this became like a cult classic type thing, because it is so horrifying and so out there that you're just like, this is absolutely terrible. And so, like I said, like Matt was like doing stuff in the apartment while I was watching it, and he finally was like standing there watching it. He's like, what are you watching? But once he couldn't walk away either. It's like, you had to know what happens to the centipede. Okay, so let's get to this. Did it make me put my phone down? Yes, I was basically glued to this thing. Like I said, I was like this the whole time. But then I'm like looking at my phone like, you know, what the F am I watching? And I'm like, there's sequels to this? I'll watch them at some point, but I gotta do a palate cleanser. I need to watch some damn Disney films or something before I can probably do another horror film for a while. I mean, I'm like, oh my God. Okay. So there's that. Now, does it get a slice, spice, or dice? Y'all might be shocked by this one, y'all, but I'm going to give it all damn 3. The reason I'm going to give it all 3 is because for something that like put you over the edge, all that kind of stuff, it does that. You know, it doesn't have that campfire feel to it, like Friday the 13th and, you know, that kind of thing. I Know What You Did Last Summer, Scream, that like, that package. But I mean, it definitely has something where you literally want to pick up the phone and be like, I need a session. I need to talk to somebody about this. I can't get the image out of my mind. So I mean, it disturbs you in that way that the horror genre can. It just takes it way out here. So would I suggest watching it? The only way I would suggest watching this film is if you have morbid curiosity. Okay, that's it. Like, I would not say, oh, it's a great film. It's not. It is literally morbid curiosity. That is 100% what drove me to watch it. It was morbid curiosity, and that's what will drive me to probably watch the sequel at some point, just to see what, I mean, where do you go from there? It's so bad. It's so terrible, and just so, and here's nothing. I'm like, these actors, the whole time even Matt said this, he's like, these actors, these are real people doing this right now. Like, they are going along with this. Like, this is so bad. I can't get you there. So if you have that kind of like morbid curiosity, you want to see it, absolutely go watch it. It is not going to serve the vibes like Freddy and Jason and all that. This is like, it messes with your head. So that's it. Enter at your own risk, I will say. I appreciate you watching. Don't forget to check out my true crime channel, Report Live from a sofa. And until my next movie binge, I'll see you then.